Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. There are several insecticides on the shelves of your local garden centers. Today, we're going to look at some of them. Also, we are planting onions. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Mike Dennison. Mr. D is a retired UT Extension agent, and Walter Battle will be joining me later. All right, Mr. D, there's a lot of insecticides out there on the shelves.
Yep.
A lot to choose from. We need to help those homeowners out.
That's right. It can be kind of confusing. There's first, insecticides can be broken down into four major categories. Okay. The botanicals, microbial, inorganic, and synthetics. Right. I mostly use synthetics, and I use a lot of microbials, but let me give you a couple of examples of each. Yeah. The botanicals are insecticides that most of them have been made from plants.
Got it.
An example is pyrethrum, which is made from chrysanthemums, neem oil made from the neem tree, and those are a couple of the most common that you see out there as far as...
A lot of people that use the neem oil.
Yeah. Some of the botanicals can be pretty tough on pollinating insects, honeybees and things like that, so you've got to be careful. But microbials are very, very interesting. That's Bacillus thuringiensis, BT. This has been around for years and years. It's very, very safe for the environment, safe for pollinating insects. The microbials are generally very specific as the type of insect they kill. The Bacillus thuringiensis kills caterpillars, and it doesn't harm bees, humans, or other insects, beneficial insects.
That's good.
Inorganic insecticides, those are the oils, mostly the summer oils, superior oils that we use. They work very good on insects when you get it, but you have to put the product on the insect. Mostly it blocks their breathing tubes. Right. And also good for eggs, insect eggs, it can smother them. You need to be careful and watch temperatures and with that. Insecticidal soaps are another example of an inorganic insecticide. And then kaolin clay, I think Surround is the trade name, is also an inorganic insecticide that you're likely to find on the market.
Okay. That's a new one.
Yeah.
That one. Okay.
It's, I think folks in the apple industry use it. It's good for codling moth control, I think is what its strength is. Synthetic insecticides, those are the ones that are most common, the ones that, that's the malathion, the 7, the diazinon. Those are synthetic insecticides. There are several, the synthetic pyrethroids kind of mimic the pyrethrums, the chrysanthemum a little bit, but they last longer, have a longer residual on the plant. Some of those synthetic pyrethroids are permethrin, S-phenvalerate, gamma-cyhalothrin. Those are some of the common synthetic pyrethroids, synthetics. Carbaryl, very, very common, been around a long time. It 7, I think, is the most common trade name for carbaryl, and it works really good on insects with chewing mouth parts, like caterpillars and things like that. Malathion is another very, very common insecticide out there. Works best on insects with sucking mouth parts, like aphids and maybe a stink bug every once in a while.
You say maybe?
Then you have acetaminoprid is another synthetic, imidacloprid. It's a systemic, and those are examples of synthetic insecticides that are out there. No matter what kind of, whether it's a botanical or synthetic or inorganic, or no matter what kind, you need to read the label. Be sure you read the label, follow the label.
That's right.
Just because you have one that you perceive to be organic and safe doesn't necessarily mean that it's totally safe as far as humans are concerned. Right. So read that label, read and heed. The label's a legal document that a lot of money, the companies put a lot of money into developing those labels, and And EPA has looked at them very, very closely, and they are legal documents, and we are bound by law to follow them, not only because they're legal, but because it can save you.
That's right.
It can keep you from getting hurt.
That's a good point. Read and heed.
Read and heed.
I like that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about this. So should we rotate those insecticides? How do you feel about that?
Probably a good idea to do that. I tend to try to use the one that is the least harmful and least likely to affect pollinating insects, which, if I can, I will go with the biological,
Sure.
like the BT. But then again, sometimes you can't do that if it's not a caterpillar, if it's in fruit trees, there are sucking insects and there's all kinds of things. But it's always a good idea to rotate because if you don't, insects can build up resistance, and you let a few survive that the product doesn't kill, and they reproduce, and then next year you got a bigger problem.
Right.
Some of these insecticides will kill mites, and there are some beneficial mites out there, and some will kill beneficial insects that kill the bad mites, and so sometimes you will have a explosion of bad insects if you continue to use the same insecticide that does that. So it's a good idea to rotate if you can.
If you can.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about action threshold, right? So when do we need to start using these insecticides? Or when should you start using insecticides?
Every insect test, probably there is an economic threshold for farmers are concerned. They'll let the insects build up to the point where they will affect their pocketbook. That's an economic threshold. Yeah. There's an aesthetic threshold, is where you can let them build up to the point where they start looking bad. And scale insects and things like that, and chewing insects can rapidly reach that threshold. But basically, the reason you want to allow insects to build up to reach these thresholds is because of the predator-prey relationship. You can't have predators, you can't have good insects if they don't have anything to eat.
That's a good point.
And if you let them build up, many times you let these insects build up a little bit, give them a chance to build up a little bit, because many times beneficial insects will come in and take them out. And I can give you an example on pecan trees. It's 30 yellow aphids per leaf on a compound leaf of pecans, and most of the time, if you let it never reaches that level. Right. It may get up to 15 or 20, and then the ladybugs and the lacewings and the beneficials come in and take them out.
That's good. That is good. Yeah, it sounds like an IPM plan.
It is integrated pest management.
Yep,
no doubt.
That sounds
good
like
idea.
That
all
is
the way.
Good. That is good stuff. Appreciate that, Mr. D.
No, don't look it.
Yep.
The azaleas are starting to bloom now. As you can see, they look very beautiful. The question I usually get is this: what should I be doing with my azaleas right now? Well, here's the answer to your question. Not much. Outside of maybe fertilizing your azaleas, I wouldn't do any pruning of my azaleas until the blooms have finished for the year, okay? So again, I would fertilize probably with an organic fertilizer. Soil test is something I would consider doing as well. But as far as cutting back on your azaleas at this time, I would hold back on that, wait till they finish blooming, then I would prune. So that will be your spring care for your azaleas at this time. All right, Walt. So we're gonna be talking about onions, right? Planting onions.
Yes, planting onions, and onions is one of my favorite foods. I mean, they can really enhance the flavor of any dish, that you cook.
Okay.
Now, there are some people who, most people plant them from the bulbs, but there are a few people who really like to plant them from seed.
Okay.
And so all you basically do, and let me just kind of show you what a onion seed.
Real small.
Yeah, real
seeds.
small, a little black seed. And to get them started, you may want to, you get your potting soil there, and basically you can just about 1/4 of an inch, that's about that much on my finger there, just plant a seed.
Okay.
Cover it up.
Just good contact there.
Yeah, just good contact there. And I mean, it really, these things will pop out. Takes about 14 days for them to germinate. And I'll show you what you're gonna have in about 14 days.
Okay.
Give me just a second here.
Sure.
I'll show you. So in 14 days, maybe 20 days, depends on, you know, where you have them located, you'll end up with this right here. And you'll have these little, you know, onions.
Okay.
And then from there, if you wait another couple of weeks, watch this.
Aha.
You'll end up with these. And this is when they're ready to go into the ground, into the raised bed here, you know, for planting. And just real simple technique. Look, folks, it's real simple. All you want to do, go down about, from my finger right there, that's about an inch. You just want to go down about an inch and close.
Stick them in there, okay.
Yep, and you want to go about 3 inches, between 3 inches there. And there you go. Doesn't take long.
Okay. So what kind of onions are there out there that we need to
Well, you know, you
consider
have
planting?
your yellow onions, you have your red onions, you have your sweet type onions.
Okay.
And then also, you know, I believe people have tried to grow things like leeks, those type of onions. I guess they're onions.
Okay.
But, you know, you begin to see a lot of that. Now, one thing about an onion you need to know, some people will buy those onions that they'll say they're supposed to be the sweet onion.
Okay.
You may not have the soil type for that onion to be sweet. Sulfur plays a big role in how that onion has flavor.
Wow,
And with the, you know, the pungentness of the onion. So, you know, you may have to kind of watch your soils there.
Okay. Okay.
Now, I want to look at one other thing here.
All right.
Now, this is the way a lot of people,
Yeah. The bulbs.
yeah, and they use the bulbs. Same concept. Go down about an inch, and I just do them like this.
So while you're doing that, well, I mean, how do we need to prepare the soil for planting onions?
Well, like any other crop,
Okay.
it really wants well-drained soil.
Well drained.
You want to have a good sunlight. You want a good 8 hours of sunlight
Okay.
with them. Let me get this one other one in here. And also, they want the pH to be about 6.5.
Okay.
That's kind of what an onion likes. Onions also like fertilization, complete fertilizer. So like a 10-10-10, a triple 13, something like that will work well for an onion.
Okay. And when you're planting them, I mean, does it matter how far apart they have to be planted, or?
Now, this here is, of course, is a raised bed right here. Now, if I was planting a field, probably would be 36-inch rows.
Okay.
But here in these raised beds that are just wonderful, you just want to go like right here. I'm probably going about 6 inches there away from the other onions. That'll work perfect in a raised bed. You know, now, over time, these onions will get bigger. And if you, in about, I would say these in about 30 days will be ready if you want to have some green onions.
30
You know,
days, okay.
the bunch onions that we chop up and put in our salad, and also put in our turnip greens or whatever that we're eating. But if you want to keep them on a little while longer, let them mature out for another, I'll say 90 days, 100 days.
Okay.
And then when the tops begin to, you know, fall over,
So that's when you know it's ready. Because I was
when
going to
they're
ask you, how
ready.
do you know
Yes,
they're ready?
that's when
Okay.
they're ready to be pulled for what we call storage onions
Okay.
or dry onions. There was one other point. How do we dry our onions out?
yeah.
Because that's always, and the way I do it, if you can get your hands on a bread rack, works perfect. Set your bread racks up where air can come up on the bottom.
Okay.
Lay
Makes
those
sense.
onions out on top of them and let that air circulate in there, and they'll just dry out. Now, you don't want to get them wet, so don't wash them before you,
Gotcha.
you know, dry them out. And then some people, you may have seen, you know, maybe in the older days, people used to use pantyhose or stockings
yeah.
to dry, you know, they would hang them
Hang 'em
up
up,
in, you know, in a closet or something or area, a storage room or whatever, and that's how they would let them dry out. But really, really good flavor. Now, as for insects, every now and then you will hear someone, I'll have someone come in the extension office and they'll talk about, you know, the onion maggot.
Okay.
But if you rotate the crop, you'll be okay. So like take this raised bed for instance. So next year I would need to raise my onions over there
this way.
somewhere.
Okay,
I don't
okay.
need to put
In the
those
same place.
onions right back in the same spot.
Good, good.
And that would help alleviate that problem.
Good, good.
And aphids can be a little bit of a problem with them, but it's you can just
aphids
wash
attack
them off,
everything.
whatever.
Yeah, just wash
aphids
those
get-
off.
Yes.
Yeah, to get on
yes.
everything.
And that's a little bit more about them right there
Okay.
as far as that goes.
So no major disease problem, anything like that? either,
Not
right?
really, not that I know of
Okay.
or that I have experience as an extension agent here in this area. No, I have not really had any issues. Again, there's just all different flavors, all different types. Just they just make any meal great.
What about short day, long day bulbs for your onions?
Oh, great question, Chris, because, it depends on where you live.
Okay.
Now, here in our area, which is the Memphis area, we want what they call a short day bulb. That's what we want to grow here, short day onions.
Okay.
That means onions that's going to receive 10 to 12 hours of daylight. Okay. Now, when you go north, okay, you want an onion that can be anywhere from 14 to 16 hours of daylight, and they're called long day onions or long day bulbs, or whichever way you want to call them. So that's what you want. That's the difference between the two. Now, the issue, if you are up north and you tend to plant one that is a short day, you'll end up getting a very small onion because it's going to want to form that bulb, so you won't be happy with your product.
Right.
So be very, very careful when you order from your seed catalog which ones you're getting.
Right.
Be very, very careful.
Watch your label because it'll probably tell you on that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see, how it does, and we'll definitely let you know, right?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, I'm going to stay here and finish this out,
Okay.
okay?
All right.
All right.
Definitely appreciate the demonstration.
Another great woodland ground cover is Dysperospis or evergreen Solomon Seal. You want to cut off these old leaves as they've gotten ratty looking through the winter. You'll go in and cut those all the way down to the base, being very careful not to cut the new shoots coming up. So there's your new shoots that have come up, and you do not want to cut those off because you're cutting off the new leaves that are coming out. But this whole patch would need to be cut back. It's better to do it before these come up, so early March, late February, early spring, before the new shoots come up, and just take the old foliage off. Very easy to do. Get you them little nippers that easy to cut.
All right, this is our Q&A segment. Y'all ready?
Yes.
Great questions, great questions. Let's start with the first via email. Can pine needles be used to heal potatoes? And this is Tony from South Haven, Mississippi. So what you think about that one, Mr. D?
Yes,
Yes.
I think you can. I think
Simply
it'd be
yes.
great. There's some concern out there about the acidic nature of pine needles. If you
Yeah.
analyze pine needles, they tend to be acidic, but it's not acidic enough to appreciably change the soil pH. It's not going to, and it's a good organic matter. It's a good product to use. Pine needles are underappreciated and underutilized.
Underappreciated.
Don't
That's
just
true.
burn them, use them.
Use
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that, Joy?
No, I was going to say, yeah.
Okay.
That or pine straw, something loose.
Yeah, that
because you
pine
want
straw.
the
Yeah.
potatoes that you're healing in to get as big as possible, and they'll be nice and clean with the pine straw.
That's right.
So you don't have to get dirt off of them. It'll be nice.
It sure would be.
Easy
me-
to dig.
Let me ask you this, though. Why do we need to heal potatoes?
It's a good question. You don't.
Yeah.
You don't, because when I was growing up, we planted them in the ground and we dug them with a middle buster, but they were dirty.
They were dirty.
And
Dirty,
they were
yeah.
small.
Yeah.
And so you don't. So I guess, and I'm doing a little reverse work here. The need to heal them is to make them bigger and cleaner and
And more productive.
yeah,
Yep.
easier to harvest.
There you go. All right.
Yeah.
There you go, Tony. We appreciate that question. Thank you much for that. So, yes, you can use the pine needles. All right, here's our next via email. If I plant it in the ground, is purslane a perennial? And this is Amy from Memphis, Tennessee. So, what do you think about that one, Jolly? I like that question.
Well, purslane is a perennial in zones 10 and 11B.
Oh, okay.
So here in zone 7B or even 8, no.
No. Yeah.
No.
So it'll be the
no.
annual. Okay.
And seeds could be coming back. It could be seeds coming back that she's getting.
Yeah.
If it's actual plant, I would be very surprised because cold winters we've had lately. But I think it's seeds coming up. But no, it's not a perennial here.
Okay. There's an annual here. Sammy, do you like purslane?
Oh, I do.
You do?
Yeah.
I think it's a good plant. Succulent leaves.
Yeah.
Good.
Very
All right.
nice.
Thank you, Ms. Amy. We appreciate that question. All right, here's our next viewer email. How do I keep my fern thriving while it is indoors for the winter? And this is Mary from Baltimore, Maryland. So what do you think about that one, Joelle?
Ferns like humid conditions, and it's going to need light, and it's going to need watering, but not as much watering as it was because it's inside.
Okay.
A lot of people I know will have a window in their bathroom, and they'll leave it in the bathroom
yeah.
because it's humid in there. Because
Yeah,
every time you
I've
take
heard
a
that.
shower, it gets nice and humid. I have personally kept them in the garage, and of course they turn all colors of, and almost completely defoliate by the end of the winter. But then the roots are alive and they come back in the summer. So it is going to defoliate some because you don't have the high light conditions. I would just keep it in as humid condition as you possibly can. Don't overwater it, and just clean off the dead leaves as they fall off, but try to keep it humid. And even if you have to
Can you
put a
mist?
little, well, you can mist it, but I was thinking to have a tray that does not drain with some rocks in it and put water in it and set the pot over the top of it so it has some kind of humidity created right there.
Okay. And if you notice from her picture, it does have a new sprout. So I guess everything that you're mentioning still pertains.
It's still fine,
Okay.
yeah. And basically what you're trying to do is hold it over till it can go outside and
Got
and thrive again.
Got it. Thank you much, Ms. Mary. Appreciate that picture too. Yeah, looks like it was beautiful. All right, here's our next viewer email. How do you root muscadine? And this is L. Reed in Memphis, Tennessee. So, Mr. D.
They're fairly easy to root using softwood cuttings, and you can layer. You can do layering is a pretty good way to root them. A very simple way. Using the cuttings is a little bit more complicated. But probably the first thing I would ask you is what variety do you have, because a lot of these varieties have patents, and it's not legal to propagate them. So make sure that the variety you want to propagate is, is not patented. And there are several of those varieties out there too.
Okay.
But as far as propagating from a softwood cutting, when you have shoots, about that long, you cut you off a good shoot that's about pencil diameter, and you take the lower leaves off and leave at least 4 buds on, and then cut off the top part of that, and leave a few leaves on the top of what you have left, and you put it in, use a rooting hormone, putting in potting soil, and keep it moist, and it takes a while. Okay. It'll be ready to plant, next year.
So when is a good time to take those plantings?
As soon as you have
Those cuttings.
shoots, long enough to get, 2 or 3 or 4, cuttings off of.
Right.
So you can't do it now. Now it's hardwood cuttings, and with bunch grapes you can have some, and you can actually go with hardwood cuttings, but I think research has shown that you will have about a 12% survival rate.
Wow.
So that means if you want 10 plants, better have 100.
Yeah.
Start with 100. So it's a lot tougher on the hardwood cutting.
That is tough. Joel, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah,
That's good.
and you talked about the air layering. Those shoots are long. You could bring it down to the ground, and the space. I like to take cuttings around the area that is from last year's growth to this year's growth, because that is a point of growth in the plant, and there's a lot of hormones there that you have a better rooting possibility in that section.
Yeah.
And, you know, either cut it there or lay it on the ground, take and put your hormone pound and bury it in some dirt and let a brick stay over it, and, you know, it will root.
That's right. Next year, cut it loose from the mother plant and transplant it to where you want it.
As long as it's not patented.
As long as it's not patented.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that is I've never heard of lawsuits involving muscadines. I mean, the potential always exists, but I have heard of lawsuits involving where farmers saved the seed from plants that were patented.
Right.
And I'm talking about soybeans and cotton. You know, you can't do that anymore. It used to be a common practice, but not anymore. The technology, I guess the amount of research that goes into producing some of these varieties, the folks that patent them want to recover the cost.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
All right. So, L. Reed, thank you much for that question. You got a good explanation here. So, Joel and Mr. D, we're out of time. That was good.
Good.
That was good. All right. Thank you much. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is questions@familyplotgarden.com. And the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. If you want to get more information on insecticides, onions, or anything else we talked about, just head on over to familyplotgarden.com. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.